What's up, Vol Nation? This is Vols JP here with the Talkin VAWLS podcast on the S&B Network. Just wanted to bring you a little recruiting wrap up from the early signing day for the Tennessee Vols. Ended up with 21 total commits. Had two commits that didn't end up signing. Sounds like Tennessee has probably asked those guys to hold off and see. Of course, we got National Signing Day that'll be coming up here in February in Tennessee. Looks like that they've got four potential spots. It'll be interesting to see what Tennessee does with that. Of course, the big name Tennessee recruit from down Chattanooga, Jay Hardy, who is committed to Auburn. We all know about that and how everybody thought that he was going to go to UT, but ended up picking Auburn there back in November. So Tennessee's got at least another month or so to try to convince him. I've already heard that some of the recruits are going to be onto him heavy. So we definitely know that Jay Hardy has a spot if he wants to join in. Of course, Darnell Washington, all the hoopla around him, whether or not he has signed, hasn't signed. He says he has, but then he's been cryptic about other things. So who knows what that kid's going to do? You can tell that he's playing this up. He's supposed to announce actually on January the 2nd today that the Vols are playing Indiana in the Gator Bowl at the Under Armour All-American game. So he says that he signed, but nobody's saying anything, of course. So be interesting. A lot of smoke that Georgia is going to end up getting his signature on that. But with him, we'll just have to wait and see. But let's get into the players that we know are committed to the Tennessee Vols for the 2020 recruiting class. And of course, this class all starts with Marietta, Georgia quarterback Harrison Bailey. Bailey's had a tremendous year, 4-star on Rivals. I think he's rated the number 6 rated quarterback. Of course, he was an Elite 11 quarterback as well. Showed out very good there also. Had a really, really good senior season. Of course, that team was absolutely loaded. They ended up winning the state championship game. I think he plays in 7A down in Georgia too. So very high classification. Of course, we all know all the other players that are on that Marietta team. But it all starts with Bailey. Any Tennessee fan knows what kind of quarterback struggles and hot and cold that Jarrett Gantano's been this year and everything. So Bailey looks like that he is the real deal, but anytime that you got a freshman quarterback coming in, you know there's going to be growing pains, but you have to like the way that Jim Chaney has been able to develop quarterbacks in the past. We've seen what he done there with Jake Fromm his freshman year, and then Eason before he got hurt. So you have to be encouraged by that. But again, it was a huge get. I know there was a lot of people nervous about Bailey potentially flipping once Tennessee started off 0-2 and was really struggling, but he stuck with the Vols, and I think by the time that his career is over with, that Vol Nation is going to be very excited. Looking at some defensive backs, of course, we know that we're going to be losing Nigel Warrior and how important that he's been to this turnaround for the Vols here in 2019. We got Keyshawn Lawrence from down in Nashville. He was a big get for the Vols to keep him in state. And then right there on signing day, Tennessee was able to flip Danico Slaughter. He's another Georgia defensive back. He was originally committed to Arizona State. Herm Edwards out there. So his tape looks really good. So excited to see him. And hey, Slaughter as a defensive back, I mean, you've got to absolutely love that. So excited to see that kid come in, and hopefully that him and Keyshawn Lawrence can give some of these upperclassmen a run for their money and push them. Moving over on to the defensive line. The big get for the Vols was able to keep Omari Thomas, the in-state defensive tackle from out there in West Tennessee. was able to get him. He was flirting a lot of times there with Ole Miss due to the distance, and then Auburn became a big player in his recruitment. He actually went to Auburn and visited for the Iron Bowl, and everybody was on edge with that. But he ended up signing with the Vols. 6'5", 301 is what it shows. Looks like that Thomas could be somebody that could come in and potentially help the Vols right off the bat. Although, if you look at the depth chart for next year, if everybody comes back and then we get Gooden back, you got to like where that this defensive line is next year, outside of losing Darrell Taylor. Tennessee also had to sweat out Tyler Barron, of course, the defensive end from Catholic down there in Knoxville. Everybody was thinking that he was going to sign or commit to the Vols early, and it just never happened. And there was always that he was enamored with Kentucky for whatever reason, and the fan base was just like, why is this kid not in? Come to find out, I think Kentucky was a real player in it, but supposedly that he was also the whole time recruiting a lot of kids to Tennessee as well. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how that we got him. We got him. Tyler Barron is in the boat. 6'4", says 250 on Rivals. I think he's actually bigger than that now. Tyler Barron is definitely somebody that could possibly come in and make an immediate impact. A kid that's been committed for a long time on the defensive line, that Dominic Bailey kid from Baltimore, Maryland. He was a commit way back in the spring, I believe it was, or maybe in February. So he stuck with the Vols. So very very big get there with him. He's been kind of flying under the radar though. Rivals has him listed at 6'3", 290. Not actually for sure what his measurables are right now. Keeping on the defensive side of the ball, we'll just stay with that right now. Of course, Tennessee got the Memphis trio, Tamarion McDonald, Martavis French, and Bryson Eason. That was a big coup there back in October. Tennessee was always on Bryson Eason, was always had a spot for him. Kind of when some of the other national recruits kind of cooled on the Vols due to their 1-4 start, Tennessee really turned up the heat on McDonald and French. I believe McDonald was a former Mississippi State commit, and I think French was Arkansas, if I'm remembering correctly on that. All three of those kids, 6'2", 6'3", 230, 240 pounds. So, it'll be interesting to see. Rivals has them all three listed as a linebacker. Not for sure. I could see French probably ending up as a defensive end potentially with that. So, but I think Bryson Eason is a middle linebacker all the way there. Of course, we hit on the Nico Slaughter. The big signing day get that Tennessee was unsure of course, was getting defensive end Morvin Joseph from Lakeland, Florida. He was originally a Florida State commit. And then he decommitted when they fired Taggart down there. Florida State came back in when Norvell was down there. He actually went down there and visited on an unofficial visit the weekend before early signing day. And Tennessee had to sweat that one out. It was down to Tennessee and Florida. He was committed at Florida one time. So that was a big get and a huge position of need there. I think Joseph is a little light right now, 210, 215 pounds, although I did see a picture of him, and he had six-pack abs and looked pretty darn stout to me. But anyway, that's what Rivals has him listed at. So it'll be important to get him in with Fitzgerald in the weight program and get him beefed up some. But definitely a speed rusher there that we're looking forward to potentially replace Darrell Taylor with that. Let's move on to the well, before I move on, I got to mention Reginald Perry. He was a late get there on the defensive end. This is a real intriguing prospect to me. He's from Fairfield, Alabama. Didn't have a whole much of hoopla around him. He was kind of going into his senior year. Rivals had him listed at 6'5", 245 pounds. He says he's now 300 pounds at 6'5", 300 pounds. Rivals has him as a defensive end. Whether or not that he'll stay on defense, that's yet to be determined. A lot of talk, the possibility of this kid potentially turning into an offensive tackle. 6'5", 300 pounds right now. You add another 20 pounds on him. If he's got some athletic ability and he's got some bend, I mean, it could certainly happen. So I've heard people say that in a couple of years, if this kid continues to develop, that there'll be a lot of people saying, how did he get out of the state of Alabama? So potentially a under the radar sleeper there for the Vols. So let's move on to the back over to the offense. Of course, I hit on first there with Harrison Bailey and how important that Bailey is to this recruiting class. But let's look at what Tennessee got as far as running back goes. We actually signed Jabari Small from out there. He's Omari Thomas' teammate from out there in West Tennessee. Tennessee got T. Hodge. A lot of the local folks will know him from Maryville. He's kind of more of the big bruiser back, 6'2", 230. Supposedly has gained some weight this year from what I understand, but says that he's kept his speed and his athleticism. So, of course, anybody that follows Tennessee knows that we've been kind of light as far as a big bruiser back, having to put Crouch in there and stuff. So I'm real excited to see what potentially that T. Hodge can bring to the table. And then you got Lenneth Whitehead. He says that he wants to play running back. I'm not convinced on that. I think Tennessee really likes him as a linebacker, so we'll end up seeing Whitehead is a great athlete from what I've read. He's from down there in Athens, Georgia, so you know that you'd imagine that when the Vols play the Dogs, that he's going to have a little chip on his shoulder there that they didn't go after him. But with that, on the offensive line, I really like what Tennessee done more towards the interior of their line. Of course, Cooper Mays. From down there in Catholic, committed to the Vols there back in the summer. Stayed with his commitment there. Probably Cooper going to be looking at probably playing center, I would think. Looked like I'd seen a recent picture of him, and he looked like that he had gained some weight as well. So really excited about Cooper Mays and getting him down there in the program and seeing what he can do. Javonte Spraggins, just a mammoth of a kid from out there in East St. Louis. He looks like he's already about 30 years old, so looks like a big old mauler. And then we got James Robinson, offensive lineman from Montgomery, Alabama. He's listed as 6'4", 330, so I'd imagine that they'll probably try to maybe trim some of that bad weight off of him. And but definitely could see that kid at 6'4", carrying a 330 pound frame. Just got to get the good weight on him there. But I would imagine all three of those kids will probably end up playing the interior. So you would expect next year, this 2021 recruiting class, that the Vols will really focus on some offensive tackles, knowing that we got Wanya and Darnell Wright at least through the 2022 season with that. Moving on to the wide receiver position, and this is the position that I really think that Tennessee really excelled. Yes, there's no 5 stars in this group, but I think we got some playmakers here, and it all starts with Jalen Hyatt from Irmo, South Carolina. The kid is going to be phenomenal. I'm telling you right now. Remember Jalen Hyatt's name in August and early September of 2020, and you're going to be like, wow, this kid is a player. Jalen Hyatt, with everything that the Vols have losing on at wide receiver, with Callaway and Jennings, Jalen Hyatt has an opportunity to come in and really play. I'm really excited about him. Jimmy Callaway is another speedster. I think Tennessee really went after some kids that have some speed at that position, and I think that they done well with that. And then probably one of the other most intriguing recruits that Tennessee was able to flip on signing day was Jimmy Holiday, the athlete from Mississippi. He wants to play quarterback. Supposedly, Tennessee has said that you can play quarterback. He was committed to TCU. He ended up flipping to the Vols. From what I gather, Cheney absolutely loves this kid. I'll admit I haven't watched any of his film, but I've heard people talk about it. They say that he's off the charts. Said he is electric with the ball in his hands. So if this kid doesn't work out as a quarterback, then certainly you could see the potential there of moving him to wide receiver as well. So with that. But I think that's going to do it. I just wanted to drop a short video here to kind of recap some of the key players that the Vols signed. Rivals has this class ranked 9th nationally in the nation. Of course, like I said at the start of the video, there's still 4 spots, so there's a potential there. If say somebody like a Jay Hardy ends up flipping, or if Darnell Washington actually commits to the Vols, that you could see that ranking go up even higher, which would be absolutely ridiculous considering where this football program has been, and even more impressive and ridiculous, where this football team and program was in October when we're sitting there at 1-4, and Vols JP himself was already saying that you might as well start looking for a new coach. And Jeremy Pruitt was not going to make it. So I admit I have to give Pruitt credit. He turned it around. I am certainly happy. I said it over and over again that the last thing that the Vols needed was a new coach. Jeremy Pruitt proved that he can coach. He proved that he could get these kids to play, and I think and believe that this team is moving in the right direction. This recruiting class may not have 5 stars written all over it, but I think that we've got some really good football players on this in this class that can definitely help this football team and the depth that we need to be able to compete. Another piece of this, if you look at some of the other SEC recruiting classes, I think Tennessee separated themselves from the likes of Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, some of the teams in the West, Arkansas, all of that. And that's one thing that we've been preaching on the Talkin VAWLS podcast is Tennessee has to get to where they are consistently beating the teams that they've always beat and that this program should beat. Tennessee should never be losing on a consistent basis to the Vanderbilts and the Kentuckys and the Arkansas and the Mississippi States. It should never happen. And that was the first step, in my opinion, that Jeremy Pruitt had to do in order to try to get this football program headed in the right direction. And it seems to be that that's what he's done. I think that this recruiting class has separated themselves from that. The challenge now, because Tennessee, listen to this, Rivals has Tennessee ranked 9th in the nation, 7th in the SEC. So let that sink in. Let that sink in. Top 10 recruiting class, middle of the pack in the SEC. Now, how much of a difference have you got from 7th, or excuse me, from 9th to top 5? That's yet to be determined. That's where Jeremy Pruitt and this coaching staff has got to come in. They have got to get these kids bought in, and they've got to develop something Butch Jones never knew, never heard of. You've got to develop these kids. And that is what I'm banking on Jeremy Pruitt and this coaching staff doing. So that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. Be sure to, if you like this video, be sure to comment, leave us some comments down there. Also, be sure to check out the S&B Network on YouTube, our Talkin VAWLS weekly podcast that we do on YouTube Live. Be sure to check that out. But until then, I'm Vols JP, and go Vols.